My name is Luna. I'm 27 years old. The night my father threw me out, a crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble fireplace so sharply it made half the room flinch. It did not sound elegant, it sounded violent. The stem hit first, then the bowl burst, and for a second nobody spoke. Bourbon slid down the white stone in amber streaks. My mother's diamond bracelet clicked against her wineglass hard enough to make that thin little shaking sound I had known since childhood. The Christmas garland on the mantel kept glowing like nothing had happened. Gold lights, green velvet ribbon, pine and smoke and citrus polish in the air. Money has a smell. That house always did. That night it smelled spoiled. My father was standing near the end of the library rug, one arm out, a finger aimed at the front door like he was giving directions to a servant. Leave now. Not leave tomorrow. Not let's discuss this in the morning. Leave now. His voice hit the bookshelves and came back even harder. Floor-to-ceiling walnut, leather-bound first editions, portraits of dead relatives who looked like they would have approved of public humiliation if it preserved the family line. The room had been staged to look intimate. Fire lit, side tables arranged, good glassware. Half the donor circle invited under the fiction of a holiday planning dinner. In reality, it had been an audience. My phone buzzed once in my hand. Small, private. The screen lit my palm with a bank notification preview I did not open yet. Across the room, my brother Grayson had that same little curve at one corner of his mouth, not a full smile, and he was too well trained for that. Just enough satisfaction to tell me he thought I had finally earned what he had always believed was coming to me. My mother drew in a tight breath through her nose. That was always worse than shouting. Don't stand there making this uglier than it already is. Making it uglier, as if I had thrown the glass, as if I had invited 3 country club wives, 2 foundation board members, Grayson's fiancé, and a hospital treasurer into the library to watch my removal. As if humiliation was a centerpiece I had arranged myself. I was standing there in a black silk dress my mother had chosen because she said navy made me look tired. My heels hurt, but my scalp still stung where the stylist had dragged a brush through my hair upstairs because apparently I always looked a little unfinished if no one supervised me. That was the family story about me. A little unfinished, a little too sensitive, a little too slow to become useful, never enough to exile in public, always enough to diminish in private. Mrs. Bell from the hospital board lowered her eyes into her Chardonnay with the desperate focus of a woman trying not to be involved. Her husband adjusted a cufflink. Talia, Grayson's fiancée, looked almost concerned, which was one of her best tricks. In rooms like that, silence did not feel empty. It felt dressed. The fight had started at dinner 20 minutes earlier. The roast had barely been carved when my father announced that Grayson would be taking on an expanded role at Whitmore Strategic Holdings in the new year. There were smiles all around the table, predictable ones, the kind rich people wear when success is less about surprise than inheritance arriving on schedule. Grayson lifted his glass like a man already rehearsing acceptance. Then my father turned to me as if adding an afterthought. He said that I would finally be doing something useful too. That was his phrase. Finally. Doing something useful. By which he meant giving up my graduate program applications, moving into the guest cottage on the edge of the estate, and managing foundation events full-time. Seating charts, floral selections, donor follow-up, handwritten notes with the right amount of grace and no visible resentment. And a soft little purpose built inside the family machine. No one had asked me, not once. It had already been decided. He said it like a benevolent correction. My mother nodded like it was practical. Grayson kept eating, and I said no. Just that. No. I did not slam a hand down. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I said one word, and that one word landed in that room like a body dropped from height. My father looked up slowly across silver and candlelight. Excuse me? I kept my fork on the plate. I'm not moving into the guest cottage, and I'm not giving up my applications to plan foundation luncheons. Grayson laughed under his breath. Talia put her fingers lightly on his sleeve as if to calm him, though he had not needed calming. She just liked being seen performing restraint. Said my mother set down her fork with that terrible precise care that means a woman is furious and wants credit for controlling it. Graduate program applications, she said, like I had announced I was joining a traveling circus. Luna, sweetheart, be realistic. You start things. You don't finish them. There it was. Family scripture. I had heard versions of that line for over a decade, when I wanted to switch schools after a year of smiling through social cruelty at St. Agnes. When I wanted art classes. When I wanted business school instead of something warmer. When I applied for internships they thought were embarrassing. When I cried too much. Then later, when I stopped crying where they could see me. I was never allowed to be complicated. I was only ever allowed to be disappointing in manageable ways. Grayson got the polished mythology. Grayson with the right jawline, the right schools, the right handshake, the right ability to sound competent in rooms full of older men who saw themselves in him. He could lose 6 figures on some idiotic private investment and still be called bold. I once ordered the wrong flowers for a Memorial Day luncheon, and my mother told 3 separate women I lacked instinct. That dinner was not the beginning. It was only the first time the collapse had witnesses. I asked my father a question I should have asked years earlier. Why do you keep making plans for my life like I work for you? Everything changed after that, not all at once. First his face, then the room, then the temperature of the air. He pushed back his chair so hard it skidded into the hardwood behind him. Someone gasped. Yet the quartet playing low holiday jazz through the ceiling speakers kept going, absurdly smooth. My mother said his name once, warning, but he did not look at her. Because everything you have comes from me. The table went still. My mother tried again. George, lower your voice. No, she needs to hear this. He was looking only at me now. Every apartment, every tuition payment, every car, every mistake cleaned up, every chance, every indulgence. And still you stand in my house and embarrass this family. My house, not our home, not your mother's home, not the place you were raised. My house. Ownership was always his truest language. I looked at him and said, I'm embarrassing the family because I said no? Grayson leaned back, one ankle over his knee, lazy as a man watching theater. You're embarrassing yourself. Ah, there's a difference. I remember looking at him then and thinking, very clearly, that we had not grown up in the same weather. We grew up under the same roof. That is not the same thing. He was raised in sunlight. I was raised in correction. My mother reached for the thing she always reached for when truth started showing through the wallpaper. Optics. Luna, apologize. This has gone far enough. For what? For the scene. That word, a scene. Everything I did that disturbed their comfort became a scene. If I flinched, it was a scene. If I withdrew, it was a scene. If I objected to being volunteered, arranged, softened, corrected, compared, or diminished, that too was a scene. In our family, obedience was considered emotional maturity. Everything else was instability. Something in me went very still, not blank. Not shut down, precise. I said carefully, I am not moving into a cottage on the edge of your property so you can pretend I'm independent while still controlling every inch of my life. Mrs. Bell's husband finally looked up. My father's face did not go red. It went pale. That was worse. Get out. The room froze. My mother said his name again, softer this time. He did not even glance at her. If that's how you feel, get out. Tonight. Leave now. And then the flute shattered. My mother had not meant to throw it exactly. She had stood too fast, turned too sharply, and the stem clipped the fireplace edge. The violence was almost accidental, which made it feel even more honest. Their house had always preferred damage with good manners. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. A text from Rebecca Sloan. Please call me as soon as you are alone. It's time. Below it, another bank preview. Incoming wire transfer pending verification. I did not open either one in that room. I knew enough about survival by then to understand that sometimes the smartest thing you can do is keep your face still until you are somewhere no one can read it. My father took one step closer and pointed toward the foyer. Take your things and go. If you want to play independent adult, be my guest. But you will not do it under my roof, under my name, while spitting in my face. Under my name. That almost made me laugh. Because the quiet truth was this. My father loved lineage only when he believed it moved through him. He had no idea my grandmother had arranged an entire future around the possibility that one day I might need protection from my own family. At the time, I did not know the full shape of it. I only knew the message mattered. I only knew Rebecca Sloan did not text lightly. I only knew my pulse had gone strangely calm. I looked at my mother. She would not meet my eyes. Her lipstick was perfect. Her posture was perfect. Her choice had been made years before that night, and she had been making it over and over ever since. I looked at Grayson. He lifted his drink. Don't worry, he said. She'll be back by New Year's. That was the last thing he said to me before everything changed. I set my napkin down. Then I took off the diamond snowflake earrings my mother had lent me for the evening and placed them on the sideboard beside the silver dish of candied pecans. Keep the earrings. My voice did not shake. That bothered them more than tears would have. But then I walked out. No one followed. Not then. The foyer was all polished limestone and cold drafts and that massive mirror my mother loved because it let guests check themselves before entering a room. I caught my own reflection in it as I passed. I looked composed. That was years of training. Breathe now. Break later. Do not bleed where they can admire it. I went upstairs to my room and pulled one carry-on suitcase from the closet. Not the full matching set with the Whitmore crest embossed inside the leather. Just the smallest one. 2 sweaters, jeans, underwear, my laptop, toiletries, passport, birth certificate folder, social security card. The framed photo of my grandmother I kept hidden in the back of my underwear drawer because my mother once told me silver frames made surfaces look crowded. And I stood in the middle of that room for a second too long. Ivory curtains, window seat, built-in shelves, monogrammed bedding, everything expensive, everything conditional. A beautiful cage is still a cage. Downstairs, I could hear the muffled shape of voices rising and settling again. My name, my father's lower baritone, my mother slipping back into hostess mode, Grayson laughing, the guests being soothed back into the evening. Families like mine can reassemble almost anything if appearances depend on it. When I came down the back staircase with my suitcase, Marta was waiting by the mudroom door. She had worked for my family since I was 11. She was wearing her coat already. Her eyes were red. I made you sandwiches, she said. She held out a brown paper bag and a thermos, turkey and tea. Oh, it's cold tonight. My throat closed so fast it hurt. I could not hug her. If I did, I would fall apart. So I took the bag and squeezed her hand once. Thank you. Then she pushed something else into my palm, a folded $20 bill. I looked at her. No. She folded my fingers over it. Take it so I can sleep. That did it. Not the money, the love, the cost of it. I nodded once and kept it. Outside, the cold hit my face so hard it felt clean. Driveway lamps glowed along the curve toward the gates. Bare branches rattled over the gravel. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked behind hedges clipped into expensive obedience. Old money neighborhoods are especially quiet after 10. You can hear your own exile. I put my suitcase in the trunk of my car and slid into the driver's seat. The door shut with that padded luxury car silence that always used to make me feel protected. That night, it felt like a sealed container for shock. I could still smell my mother's gardenia perfume on the coat I was wearing from Thanksgiving. My hands were steady when I unlocked my phone. I opened the bank notification. Pending wire transfer. $18 million. I stared at it, once, twice, a third time. The number did not become real just because I looked at it longer. Underneath it, an email loaded from Sloan and Mercer Private Counsel. Subject: Release of Protective Trust and Immediate Next Steps. I tapped Rebecca's number. She answered on the first ring. Where are you? In my car. Are you alone? Yes. She exhaled once. Not relief, confirmation. Good, listen carefully. Your grandmother's release conditions have been triggered. The trust is fully under your control now. There are documents waiting in the secure portal, including the deed protections, operating agreements, governance clauses, and a private letter she wrote for you. Do not go back into that house. Do not discuss any of this with your family tonight. I gripped the steering wheel harder. 18 million? Liquid and near-liquid assets, yes. More is attached to governance rights and protected structures. Your father never directly owned the reserve fund. He had managed access through a legal arrangement that depended, in part, on your continued residency and family status within the estate structure. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My father's favorite thing in the world was control. Said my grandmother had built a system where control could vanish the second he crossed a certain line. I let out one strange broken sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. She knew. Rebecca did not soften her voice. Your grandmother knew everything. I closed my eyes. My grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, had been dead 18 months. Publicly, people still spoke about her like she had been half patron saint, half military threat. Steel-spined philanthropist, unimpressed widow, woman who could make governors sit straighter with one look across a gala table. Privately, she was the only person in that family who ever looked at me as if I were not a burden to be managed. She taught me how to read balance sheets when I was 12, how to keep originals, not copies, saw how to notice when someone smiles with only one half of their face, how to never confuse generosity with surrender. Once in her sunroom, stirring cream into tea, she said, "Beautiful families often hide ugly math." I had thought she meant emotional math. Who got more? Who cost more? Who counted more? I had not realized she meant actual ledgers too. Rebecca's voice sharpened. Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight? I thought of hotels, anonymous elevators, late-night room service, a place where no one knew what family I had just been cut from. Yes. Good. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., County Clerk's Office Annex downtown. We notarize the final release and file the occupancy separation notice. The case reference is already prepared. County Clerk, case number 2024-17823. Bring identification, your phone, and do not bring family members. The legal language steadied me immediately. Paperwork is underrated comfort. Chaos hates documentation. What happens after that? I asked. She paused, then said, After that, your life begins. I drove to a Marriott near the interstate because it was anonymous and still serving food late. The clerk at the desk wore a Santa tie and smiled the way people smile when they are tired and not especially curious. I paid with my own debit card, not the family Amex my father monitored. In the elevator mirror, one line of mascara had smudged beneath my eye, just enough to prove I was real. My room overlooked a parking lot, a Panera sign, and a truck idling under sodium lights. I have never loved a view more. I sat on the edge of the bed, kicked off my heels, and opened the secure portal. Documents. Shows pages and pages and pages. Protective trust release. Transfer records. Property deed appendices. Governance clauses. Reserve authority language tied to the Whitmore Foundation. Development collateral structures. Emergency separation instruments. And then a notarized statement from my grandmother, written in language so exact it almost made me dizzy. If daughter Luna Whitmore is ever forcibly displaced, coerced into dependency, or removed from residence under humiliating or punitive conditions. The reserve transfer, authority severance, and governance realignment shall activate without need for further family approval. I read that line 3 times, then the rest. There were pages explaining why, pages documenting observed favoritism, pages noting my father's pattern of using support as leverage, pages outlining structural contingencies if Grayson's expected leadership ever became a liability. My grandmother had not left me money because she thought I was fragile. She had left me escape velocity. At the bottom of the portal was a scanned letter in her handwriting. Luna, if you are reading this, then the people who should have protected you have failed in a way too obvious to hide. I am sorry I was not alive to see it and stop it myself. Take what is yours. Use it to become impossible to corner. Do not confuse forgiveness with re-entry. That line broke something open in me, not all at once, quietly. I pressed my hand over my mouth and cried without sound. Not movie crying, not dramatic gasping. Just the deep, private grief of a person realizing someone saw the storm coming and loved her enough to build shelter before it hit. I cried for the girl who kept shrinking to fit a family portrait. I cried because somebody had believed me before I ever had proof. I cried because somebody had prepared for my exile like it was weather. The next morning, I wore jeans, sneakers, and a camel coat because I suddenly trusted comfort more than image. I bought a burnt latte downstairs and stood in line behind a woman arguing about oat milk. The world was offensively normal. People checked email. A toddler cried. A man in a fleece vest laughed into a phone about quarterly projections. America keeps moving while your life cracks open. There is something cruel and useful about that. At the county clerk's annex, and the fluorescent lights were unforgiving. Rebecca was already there, hair immaculate, legal folder in hand, looking like she could dismantle a dynasty before lunch and still make it to dinner on time. We sat near a vending machine that buzzed like a trapped insect until our number was called. Then we signed, verified, initialed, notarized, filed. The clerk stamped the packet and slid it back. All set. Such a small phrase, such an enormous detonation. Outside on the courthouse steps, the air still held the bite of night frost. Rebecca handed me a second folder. Your father's access line is frozen. The reserve and related guarantees are no longer available to him. He may not realize the full scope until quarter-end pressure hits, possibly sooner. Did she do all this because of him? I asked. Rebecca adjusted her gloves and looked at me steadily. She did this because she had eyes. That was the beginning of the real work, not the dramatic part, the useful part. We opened new banking structures, a private mailing address, a new phone account, a housing LLC for privacy. We changed passwords, froze credit, flagged legacy authorizations, separated every account or service my parents had once touched in the name of helping me. By noon, I had more direct control over my own life than I had had in 27 years. By 3 p.m., my father had called 17 times. My mother texted first. Come home. Your father overreacted. Not, are you safe? Not, I'm sorry. Just come reset the set. Then Grayson. Having fun with your tantrum? Dad says stop being ridiculous. Then my mother again. You made your point. Now that one almost made me laugh. I blocked all 3 numbers before sunset. 2 days later, I flew to Boston because my grandmother once told me it was a city for people who needed to become serious without becoming cruel. I rented a furnished 1-bedroom in Back Bay through my new housing LLC. 3rd floor. Brownstone. Creaking stairs. Radiator that hissed like gossip. Brick out the windows. Bicycles below. One church spire in the distance refusing to be decorative. I signed the lease in my own name. No co-signer. No father copied. No mother reviewing the neighborhood and asking what it said about me. That lease felt holier than most religious experiences I have had. The first grocery trip made me cry in aisle 7 at Trader Joe's because no one could tell me what not to buy. Almond butter, frozen dumplings, cheap tulips. 2 mugs because I liked the shape. Freedom arrives in ridiculous packaging sometimes. For the first month, I did almost nothing dramatic. I slept. I unpacked slowly. I sat on the floor and ate sandwiches out of paper bags. I found a therapist named Dr. Weiss, whose office smelled like cedar and tea. On my intake form, under family history, I wrote, "Emotionally strategic people with excellent table manners." She laughed once, softly, then looked at me with the kind of professional calm that makes honesty feel less dangerous. "You can stop being coherent for me," she said during our second session. That sentence nearly wrecked me. I started walking before sunrise along the Charles, gloves on, head down, the river black and hard in the cold. Rowers moving through it like discipline made visible. Some mornings I bought coffee from a cart and watched office towers wake up. Buildings are easier than families. Buildings do not pretend to love you while inventorying your usefulness. Then I started reading the documents again, not because I did not understand them, because I wanted to. I wanted every clause inside me, every condition, every hidden beam. My grandmother had not just given me money, she had tied leverage to visibility. The Whitmore Foundation Reserve required my sign-off for certain reallocations. A family-linked development guarantee used my protected subtrust as quiet collateral. Governance rights around the foundation and reserve were built around my continuity in ways my father had been arrogant enough never to examine closely. He mistook access for ownership. Men like him often do. Rebecca introduced me to Priya Rahman, an independent financial advisor in Cambridge who had zero interest in my surname and every interest in facts. She wore sharp glasses, spoke in precise, clipped sentences, and never once treated me like a young woman who needed simplification. We built conservatively first: cash buffer, treasury ladders, diversified holdings, personal insulation no one could reach. Then we built forward. Not a vanity project, not a revenge vehicle, a structure. I founded North House. The name came to me on a freezing morning on the river. A place oriented by survival, by direction, by the simple radical idea that safety should not require obedience. North House focused on literacy grants for girls, legal aid access, and housing transition support for women leaving coercive family systems. Not because it sounded noble, because I understood in my bones what dependency can do when it is wrapped in polished love. I rented a small office near South Station with terrible fluorescent lights and carpet ugly enough to keep everyone humble. My first hire was Celeste, a former legal aid coordinator with a laugh like a match strike. My second was Mateo, an operations manager who treated nonprofit chaos like a puzzle given to him for pleasure. At night, I took online finance courses because I refused to leave blind spots where people like my father could still imagine me naive. During the day, I sat in DMV lines, changed utilities into my own name, waited on hold with Social Security, corrected address records, separated old linked authorizations. Untangled practical little knots my mother had once handled for me in the name of convenience. Nobody applauds when you move your own phone bill into your own account. They should. That is one of the first sounds freedom makes. Back home, the Whitmores kept performing continuity. I knew because people talked. Old family networks are just gossip in blazers. Mrs. Bell called Rebecca out of concern. My mother told people I was taking space in the Northeast. Grayson joked at the club that I had run off to cosplay adulthood. My father referred to me publicly only once, at a donor brunch, calling me a sensitive child in need of perspective. Sensitive child. I was 27 and legally holding the substructure under his favorite project. Spring came. Boston softened. And I bought mismatched ceramic bowls from a shop in the South End and a second-hand oak desk scarred with old ink marks that felt more honest than anything in my parents' house. My building's HOA sent me a warning because I had left flattened shipping boxes in the hallway too long. I laughed out loud when I read it. Imagine rules with no emotional blackmail attached. By July, North House had its first pilot partnership with 2 shelters and a legal intake clinic. On the 4th of July, while fireworks flashed over the harbor, Celeste and I stood on the roof of my building, eating takeout noodles from cartons. She knocked her soda can gently against mine. For someone disowned by old money, you're weirdly calm. It took a lot of money to make me this calm, I said. She laughed so hard she almost choked on noodles. But under the joke was something true. The best revenge is expensive in all the right ways. Not flashy, not tacky, not loud, just well-funded peace. By late summer, pressure had started showing at home. First came a message from Talia, not Grayson. Talia, hey stranger, family's worried, call your mother? I ignored it. Then a voicemail from my father's CFO asking if I had a moment to clarify a trust administration detail. I ignored that too. Then Rebecca called. They've discovered the development guarantee issue. I was standing in my office, rain moving down the window in long silver lines. How bad? Bad enough that your father yelled at 2 bankers and an attorney before noon. I looked out at summer rain and felt something inside me go still in a completely different way than before, not fear, recognition. What exactly did he find out? That the bridge line for Whitmore East depended in part on reserve stability and beneficiary continuity. You were the continuity. Whitmore East was my father's vanity project. Luxury redevelopment with words like heritage, stewardship, continuity, and community draped all over it like silk over wrought. He had bragged about it at every gala for a year and a half. It was supposed to secure Grayson's executive future. Everyone around them had treated it like destiny with landscaping. Turns out destiny can have paperwork. Remove one hidden support and marble starts to crack. Over the next 2 months, the cracks widened. A partner withdrew, then another. A local business column mentioned unexpected internal restructuring at Whitmore Strategic Holdings. My one board member resigned for health reasons, which in wealthy circles means I would prefer not to be attached to this when it starts smelling worse. Grayson, apparently, had private investment problems of his own and had been using company relationships to patch personal holes. I wish I could say I felt nothing. That would sound cleaner. I felt plenty. Vindication, anger, relief so sharp it almost felt like grief. Sometimes I felt 14 again, locked in a bathroom at Christmas, because my mother told me not to talk too much around serious adults. Sometimes I felt 23, standing in a doorway while my parents celebrated Grayson's promotion and forgot I had a graduate interview the next morning. Healing is not a straight line. It is a staircase in the dark. You still climb it. Still. What? You just stop insisting every step be graceful. The first time my father reached me directly, it was October. Unknown number. I was in line at CVS buying detergent and throat lozenges. I almost let it go. Then I answered. Hello? Luna. Not sweetheart, not honey, not any performance of softness. Just my name, clipped, impatient. This is an unexpected use of your afternoon, I said. Enough games. Still command first, always command first. We need to discuss the trust structure. Do we? You are interfering in matters you do not understand. I looked at a wall of lip balm under cruel fluorescent light and smiled. That would be more convincing if your bankers weren't calling me. He went silent for exactly 1 beat, not shocked, recalculating. Come home, we'll sort this out privately. There it was. The old script. Back to the house, back under tone, back into rooms where truth could be kneaded into something more presentable. No. Luna, don't be childish. That word. Not wrong, not unfair. Childish. because anything a daughter does that disrupts a father's entitlement becomes immaturity on contact. I should have hung up. Instead, I gave him one clean sentence. You told me to leave. I did. You do not get to call the result childish because it became inconvenient. The cashier asked if I had a rewards number. I gave it. My father listened while I spelled my last name to a drugstore employee like the ordinary logistics of my independence offended him. Your mother is ill over this, he said. My mother was not ill. My mother had migraines when Image slipped. There's a difference. Yeah, I hope she finds a good doctor, I said. Then I ended the call. That night, I sat on my sofa with takeout Thai food and watched the city through the window until the noodles went cold. Not because I regretted the line, because drawing the right line still hurts when it cuts through the fantasy you were raised inside. Dr. Weiss had warned me. You are not only leaving people, she said once, you are leaving the role they built for you. The role had been simple: absorb discomfort, return on cue, make their version of events emotionally affordable. I was no longer willing to do that labor. November brought the formal request. An estate meeting over Thanksgiving weekend. Rebecca forwarded the notice with one dry sentence. If you attend, bring your spine. It would take place at the Whitmore Foundation offices downtown. Not the house. Neutral ground, at least on paper. Board representatives, outside counsel, accounting staff, a probate compliance officer because my grandmother had been too careful to leave anything that important floating on charm alone, public enough to matter, controlled enough to cut. I nearly declined. Then I thought of every holiday I had sat at a long table trying not to disturb the silver. Every family photo where my mother adjusted my shoulders like I was furniture. Every fundraiser where Grayson introduced me as my sister, she's still figuring things out. No, I would go, not to ask back in, to witness the lock. Thanksgiving morning in Boston smelled like butter and rain. Neighbors carried pies and folded chairs down the stairs. I dressed slowly. Cream blouse, charcoal trousers, low black heels, and my grandmother's gold cuff bracelet, heavy enough to feel like instruction. I flew down that afternoon and checked into a hotel downtown instead of the family house. That mattered to me more than I expected. Distance can be ceremonial. My mother texted before the meeting. Please come by first. We can talk as a family. I did not answer. At 6, I met Rebecca in the hotel lobby. Navy suit, leather file thick enough to bludgeon a man with if necessary. Ready? She asked. No. Excellent, she said. Overconfidence is how your father got here. The Whitmore Foundation offices occupied the top floors of a glass building my grandmother had funded because she believed philanthropy should happen in structures ugly enough to discourage vanity. My father had spent years trying to soften that with orchids, brushed brass, and overly expensive art. It still felt like accountability in elevator form. The conference room was full when we entered. My parents sat at one end of the long table, my mother in winter white, as if sorrow required branding, my father in a dark suit, jaw set. Grayson leaned back in his chair with that deliberate ease men use when they are trying not to look rattled. Talia beside him, too composed. 3 board members, 2 family firm attorneys, outside counsel, the compliance officer, probate records specialist, foundation treasurer. Every head turned when I walked in. Not because I made a scene, because I looked fine. That unsettles people more than tears. Rebecca had saved me a seat directly across from my father. She slid a folder in front of me. The paper smelled like toner and clean edges. My mother spoke first. Luna, you look thin. Hello, Mother. No one smiled. The compliance officer opened the meeting with the calm of a woman who had seen powerful families rot before and charged by the hour to watch it clearly. She summarized the agenda. Trust Administration Review, Reserve Authority Clarification, Development Guarantee Exposure, Governance Interpretation, Beneficiary Rights under the Eleanor Whitmore Structure, It was the most beautiful sentence I had heard in months. Translated, it meant this: "Tonight, facts are driving." My father tried to seize tone immediately. "This entire situation stems from a misunderstanding and an emotional overreaction." Rebecca cut in before he could fully settle into the performance. "For the record, yeah, our position is that the triggering event was a punitive expulsion witnessed by multiple third parties, followed by documented attempts to coerce the beneficiary back into residence for financial access restoration." My father looked at her. "Punitive expulsion?" Rebecca opened a transcript packet. "Would you prefer 'leave now' shouted in front of donors?" One board member looked down so fast it was almost comical. My mother inhaled sharply. "This is grotesque." "Yes," I said. "It was." That was the first time I spoke in the meeting, and hearing my own voice in that room felt almost unfamiliar. It had no plea inside it, no hidden hope of being understood, just clarity. The probate specialist began walking everyone through my grandmother's documents: original letters, amendments, supporting memoranda, contingency instruments, backup declarations. Her language was cold and exact in the way only deep love prepared by disappointment can be. "If daughter Luna Whitmore is displaced under humiliating family action, reserve transfer, authority severance, and governance realignment shall activate without need for further family approval." One sentence after another. No flourish, no sentiment, just architecture. My father shifted in his chair. Grayson interrupted twice and got shut down twice by people who respected paper more than sons. Then came the letter. Rebecca submitted my grandmother's private governance statement to the board. In it, Eleanor Whitmore explained that she had observed repeated emotional favoritism, reputational manipulation, and dangerous dependency assumptions built around Grayson's presumed leadership. She wrote that George Whitmore spoke often of stewardship while confusing inheritance with entitlement, and that he had underestimated the granddaughter who listened. The granddaughter who listened. I kept my face still. Inside, something tightened and opened at the same time. The room did not explode. That would have been easier. It changed temperature instead. Board members stopped performing family loyalty and started calculating institutional risk. People sat differently. Pens moved, eyes shifted. Nobody was in this for sentiment anymore. Mrs. Bell's husband, the foundation treasurer, cleared his throat. "Was the reserve materially underwriting part of the Whitmore East guarantees?" Outside counsel answered. "Indirectly, yes, through credibility assumptions and contingent support tied to beneficiary continuity." "And those assumptions failed the night Miss Whitmore was expelled?" "In effect, yes." My father finally lost his grip on his expression. "This is absurd. One family dispute cannot unravel decades of planning." Rebecca folded her hands. "A family dispute did not unravel it. Your assumption that your daughter was structurally irrelevant did." Silence. Living silence. The kind that reassigns power without saying so. Grayson leaned forward. "Luna, come on. Grandma loved all of us. You know she would never have wanted this." I looked at him, at the watch, at the tired eyes, at the first real line of panic in his mouth. She wrote 53 pages saying exactly what she wanted. Talia stared at the table. My mother tried tears then. Oh, not full tears. The bright, controlled kind she wore beautifully at funerals and committees. "We were trying to help you," she said. "You have always struggled to find direction. Keeping you close was kindness." That almost undid me. Not because it was true, because she still needed it to be true. There are mothers who hold you when the world turns cruel. Then there are mothers who become part of the weather. I looked at her and said very quietly, "Keeping me close was never the goal. Keeping me dependent was." She flinched. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The compliance officer asked whether I intended to restore prior access arrangements tied to the reserve and related governance structures. No. She asked whether I intended to maintain my beneficiary authority under the current instruments. Yes. She asked whether coercion, misrepresentation, or family pressure had influenced my decision. I looked directly at my father. No, Clarity did. Rebecca then submitted the post-expulsion records, my mother's texts, my father's call summaries, Grayson's insults, the CFO outreach, everything time-stamped, organized, and clean enough to strip excuse from it. People think truth needs drama. Often it just needs formatting. My father went cold instead of loud. That used to terrify me. In childhood, cold meant punishment later, out of sight. I felt my body wait for the old fear. It came, then passed. Because I was not 16, I was not trapped. I was not going home with them. A woman becomes dangerous the moment consequences stop being domestic. The board called a recess. In the hallway outside the conference room, glass reflected city lights over early dark. My mother came after me first. Luna, I turned. Up close, she looked tired under the beauty she had spent a lifetime arranging like armor. Enough. Enough was years ago. You are humiliating us. There it was again, not hurting us, not breaking us, humiliating us, reputation first, always. You did that yourselves. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. Families survive ugly moments. They move on. They do not destroy each other in public. I thought of the library, the fireplace, the broken glass, her standing there while he did it. You taught me that public was the only place truth mattered to you. Her face changed. Recognition first, then anger, then something harder to name. What do you want? She asked. Yeah, that should have felt triumphant. It did not. It felt late. Too late. Nothing from you. That landed exactly where I meant it to. Not money, not apology theater, not access, not a holiday performance. Nothing. She stepped back like the air itself had struck her. When we went back into the conference room, the board had fully shifted into damage containment mode. That is the moment elite families fear most. Not scandal itself, redistribution of loyalty. The treasurer recommended immediate separation between family image management and foundation governance. An outside review was proposed for Whitmore East. Temporary limits on discretionary family draw access, exposure analysis, compliance oversight. Grayson objected so fast he knocked over his water glass. For once, nobody rushed to save him from the mess. Then came the final document. Rebecca handed a sealed copy to the compliance officer. She opened it, scanned the first page, and looked up. This is Eleanor Whitmore's contingent letter of public instruction. My father frowned. Public instruction? Rebecca's voice was almost kind. Your mother understood optics, George. The letter stated that if the triggering event caused governance disruption, the Foundation Board was authorized to disclose, in summary form, that structural changes resulted from beneficiary mistreatment, contrary to Eleanor Whitmore's explicit wishes for protective continuity. Plain English. If they broke the system by breaking me, the truth could be told. Not gossip, not feelings, not family drama. Truth. Legally framed. Socially ruinous. The treasurer removed his glasses. So one board member swore under his breath. Another asked outside counsel for an opinion on disclosure risk. It is permissible, counsel said, and likely prudent. That was it. The elegant exposure. No screaming, no confession over cocktails, no theatrical collapse. Just polished language with a kill switch built inside it. My grandmother had been magnificent. My father stood abruptly. This meeting is over. The compliance officer did not even blink. It is not. He looked like a man discovering that volume had jurisdiction only in his own house. Grayson turned to me, the mask finally slipping. Luna, seriously, what the hell is wrong with you? I looked at him and finally understood something I should have learned years earlier. Golden children are often just badly managed liabilities in better lighting. Nothing, I said. That's the problem for you. He laughed once, ugly, hollow. You think this makes you powerful? I glanced at the files spread across the table. No, I think it makes me accurate. That was the moment. The exact one. When my life stopped asking permission to exist. The board voted before 9, independent review, governance separation, temporary suspension of discretionary family draw access, formal acknowledgement of beneficiary-triggered restructuring under the Eleanor Whitmore instruments, public summary disclosure to follow. My father's empire did not collapse in that minute. Wealth rarely falls in cinematic ways. It weakens administratively first. Then lenders get careful. Then board members get nervous. Then invitations thin. Then people who once laughed too loudly at your jokes suddenly remember their principles. Collapse when you are rich is often paperwork wearing evening clothes. When the meeting ended, everyone stood awkwardly, gathering coats, phones, documents, versions of themselves. My mother stayed seated. My father moved toward the door with the rigid gait of a man trying not to limp in front of witnesses. Talia stared straight ahead. Grayson muttered under his breath, like he still believed contempt counted as control. Rebecca touched my elbow. You can leave now. I almost told her I knew. Instead, I let the sentence sit where it belonged. A reversal, a mercy. In the hallway near the elevators, my father caught up to me. You think you've won? He said it low. Private. Dense. The old intimidation register. I turned to face him. But for a second I could see every version of him at once. The father who taught me to ride a bike by shouting. The man who inspected report cards like contract terms. The host who cared more about who was in the room than what was true inside it. The father who did not know how to love a daughter he could not display without editing. This was never a game, I said. You are my daughter. I held his gaze. You remembered that late? The elevator opened behind me with a soft chime. He tried one last time. You will regret making enemies of your own family. I stepped backward into the elevator. No, I said. I regretted mistaking them for home. The doors closed between us. I did not shake until 20 minutes later in the hotel bathroom, both hands on the sink, city lights blinking beyond the glass. Yet my face looked exactly the same. That is one of the strangest things about survival. Whole wars can end behind a face that still needs moisturizer. I called Dr. Weiss from the airport the next morning. It's done, I said. She was quiet for a second. How do you feel? I looked out at a Hudson News, a little girl dragging a unicorn backpack, a man arguing about a seat upgrade, the relentless, ordinary machinery of strangers continuing. Lighter, I said, and sad and free, all at once. That sounds right, she said. Christmas that year I stayed in Boston. Celeste brought lasagna. Mateo brought wine. My upstairs neighbor dropped off sugar cookies shaped like mittens. We watched bad holiday movies while snow hissed against the windows. At midnight, I turned my grandmother's cuff bracelet over in my hand and noticed. And for the first time, 4 tiny engraved words on the inside. Stand still. See clearly. I laughed and cried at the same time. North House expanded in February, then again in June. By the end of the next year, we had funded legal transition grants in 3 states and launched a fellowship for women rebuilding after financial coercion inside family systems, marriages, and inherited dependency traps. I gave one interview to a serious publication. No family details, just mission, numbers, structure, need. The reporter asked what drew me to the work. I told the truth. Some doors close like punishment, I said. Sometimes they are the first honest thing that happens to you. That quote traveled farther than I expected. Women wrote to us, called, applied, told stories in flat voices and careful emails. These stories about houses with perfect hedges and cruel kitchens. Mothers who smiled too brightly. Fathers who funded cages. Siblings who translated favoritism into destiny. Pain has suburbs more often than people admit. A year and a half after the night in the library, I bought a home of my own. Not a mansion, not a monument. A brick townhouse in Cambridge with sunlight in the kitchen, deep windowsills, and a magnolia tree out back that bloomed like it had good news. I signed the deed in a title office, while a notary stamped papers with the bored efficiency of someone who had no idea she was blessing a new bloodline. I furnished it slowly. Linen curtains, real books, a long oak table sturdy enough for elbows, soup, and honest conversation. In the front hall, one framed black and white photo of my grandmother. No clutter. Just witness. The Whitmores kept falling in tasteful ways. Whitmore East was scaled back, then sold off in pieces. Grayson and Talia never married. Too much timing pressure, according to a society column. My mother resigned from 2 charity boards to focus on family and health. My father missed 3 consecutive donor events, which in his world was almost the same thing as dying. He wrote me one letter the following fall. Not an email, a physical letter, forwarded through Rebecca to my business address. Luna, I have made mistakes. Families are imperfect organisms. Pride has distorted many things. If there is still a path to reconciliation, your mother would welcome it before the holidays. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he did, no naming, and just an invitation to resume my place as decorative daughter near Christmas lights. I put the letter in a drawer and never answered it. Forgiveness is personal, re-entry is structural. I learned the difference young enough to build a life around it. On the 2nd anniversary of the night I left, I went alone to the cemetery outside Hartford, where my grandmother was buried under a modest headstone that read, Eleanor Whitmore beloved and unimpressed. That second line had been my doing. I brought white roses and a thermos of tea. The morning was cold and bright. Frost edged the grass. Traffic whispered far off. I stood there in gloves and boots and told her everything she had missed. The office, the grants, the townhouse, the board meeting, the fact that I finally understood why she kept originals in a fireproof box. The fact that I no longer woke up reaching for approval that was never coming. The fact that some wounds stop aching the moment you stop calling them home. Then I said the thing that mattered most. You were right, I told her. Peace is better. Nothing mystical happened. No wind through the trees with hidden meaning. No sign. Just the quiet, plain comfort of having become someone my younger self would have trusted. When I got back to Cambridge, the magnolia had dropped leaves across the back steps. I made soup, answered emails, reviewed a fellowship budget. Then I stood in my kitchen as dusk turned the windows blue and felt the kind of quiet that does not come from emptiness. It comes from safety. That was all I ever wanted underneath everything else. Not their money, even though I took what was mine. Not their status, and even though I understood it better than they did. Not revenge, not really. I wanted a life no one could threaten by raising their voice. People still ask whether I miss them. I miss the idea of what parents should be. I miss the fantasy of being chosen without performance. I miss holidays that never truly existed. But I do not miss that house. I do not miss being watched for flaws. I do not miss shrinking so arrogance could stay comfortable. A house can glitter and still have no room for you. I learned that in silk and crystal and donor smiles. I learned something better in courthouse lines, lease forms, blocked numbers, and grocery aisles. I learned that freedom is rarely loud at first. It starts small. A key, a signature, a rented room, a new password, a bill paid from your own account, a Tuesday nobody controls. Then one day, it is your whole life. My parents told me to leave like I was nothing. They thought they were cutting off the weak daughter, the extra, the embarrassment. the soft one who would come back hungry and grateful and easier to manage. Instead, they opened the gate for the one person holding a future they had been counting on without understanding it. I walked out with one suitcase, a paper bag from Marta, and a phone buzzing in my hand. I never went back. And the best part is not the money. Not the boardroom, not the public unraveling, not even the look on my father's face when the documents turned and he realized the floor had never really been his. The best part is this. He was right about one thing that night. I did leave under my own name. I just made it mean something he could never own.